Welcome back to Everything EOS, the longest running EOS podcast. I am here today with one of my absolute favorite people within the EOS IO and DAPP network ecosystem, Raman Bindlish. Raman has been a vocal leader of EOS IO since before the mainnet even launched. He has been educating the community through his YouTube channel, Investing with a Difference, through his educational seminars and workshops he's organized throughout the Silicon Valley, You've organized events such as the Scaling Blockchain after the San Fran Hackathon. You worked with the EOS World Expo last April. And as if that isn't enough, you're also the founder of Blockstart, a Silicon Valley-based blockchain technology company with a focus on enterprise applications and deployment of blockchain to real-world use cases with projects such as Moonlighting with 750,000 users on their platform. Blockstart is also a Genesis DAPP service provider on the DAPP network. Woo. And you're also the first runner-up from the DAPP Network Hackathon. Welcome to the show, Raman. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Jack. I think this was amazing. So thanks for such a great introduction. I think we are trying to do our bit in this exciting world of decentralized networks and decentralized applications. I think we are just at the start of something really big. That's what we felt. And I think Blockstart, I think a lot of people know me from Investing with a Difference, which was more like a hobby project, which we were doing when we got a little too excited about EOS and wanted to make sure that I build an audience and try to educate people about it. But I think on Blockstart, I think, yes, it has been our passion for last 1.5 years and been trying to build this this comes from my whole experience in the startup world, trying to, guide people whenever new technology comes, there's a huge opportunity. And blockchain is, I think, at that space where there is a big untapped potential for what we can build. And we're trying to help as many enterprise or as many developers as we can in this process.
I remember you were in Korea with me actually a couple of months ago, like October, late September, when we were there for the DAPP network community gathering we did out there. And you mentioned you were also an early investor in Facebook.
I won't call it like early investor as in before IPO. Means of course being in here, which I was very excited about when Facebook went IPO, and it was brought down. I think if somebody was following it at that time, it crashed pretty hard after IPO. It went all the way below $20, and I think yes, I do remember that. So this is actually the history of Investing with a Difference, where we used to run investor communities even before blockchain, even before of this thing. So Investing with a Difference is not like EOS thing, which it has got into now, but it was anything about investments. And that was my hobby always, helping people understand investments, understanding like the basics and the fundamentals of what they are putting their money into. But yes, Facebook, I think I loved when it came out as an idea, how they would really benefit. And I would say I learned how bad it would be also much earlier than others, probably because I was so involved as it started growing and people started, and the way the advertisers kept flocking onto that and using the data for some amazing purposes. So yes, I think you can call me as like a early, like public sector, like IPO, after IPO investor. And, but yes, that also makes me help and understand what's going on in this world, because we really investigated in detail on how Facebook works.
I always appreciate your experience and background, because you have that deep understanding of venture funds and like investing. And you actually just launched the Blockstart Venture Fund. Are you even able to talk about that much today?
Before we go into any of the details, I would like to, first of all, have a disclaimer and some disclosures. So all the projects which we are working on, so you can safely assume that all of these projects have some sort of personal vested interest from me and from Blockstart. So do not take anything we say as investment advice, including the EOS token and DAPP token and so on. We do have investments in that as my personal as well as Blockstart side. So this is all for informational purposes, and we are just sharing the excitement about the new technologies we are building. So please consider it as such. Sure. I think we can talk about it. I think it was in private circles for last 6 months, but we got a 506C approval from SEC, which means that we can now publicly talk about it. So definitely I can touch base on that. But just to give you a background, right, I've always been like for last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time in private equity, as we call Web 2.0, where all these Facebook, Google of the world started creating bigger influence on how the internet is used. And also the cloud economy started growing. I've been part of many startups as an advisor and also part of some other venture funds previously. And I've seen this from up close on how the new technologies can really change the way people interact with each other and the big impact of paradigm shifts. So when this whole blockchain thing is starting, we set up our Blockstart accelerator. We realized that there's a big piece missing, which is the investment piece, like the same kind of infrastructure around for the small startups. Today, the VC world has become pretty big, like the billions of dollars. Even our EOS VC fund, which we all refer to all the time, it sits with $1 billion fund. And it becomes very difficult for a VC firm when they have billions of dollars of fund to look at ideas which need a $50,000 grant or $100,000 investment. And they usually tend to look at much bigger and more mature ideas. So what I realized, there was a big gap in this space where people are like, blockchain is in very early days. It's not like we cannot compare it with AI or other technologies which are being deployed at much mass, like a bigger scale. So blockchain ideas do not need $1 million funding. You can build an idea which can be $100,000 funding, and you can really make a big impact and grow it into the ideas which these big VCs want. Like ultimately today, in blockchain space, the biggest investment is going into exchanges in like pure crypto use cases, not into decentralized application use cases, because we are not there yet. We are still in early stage of that, and people are still developing concepts. So I think this is where we saw the opportunity, being with the experience we had, and we said we need to launch a kind of you can call it not really a venture fund, even though it is technically a venture fund, but it can be an angel investor fund. And as you know, most of the crypto investors, they are looking for the next big idea always, and they cannot do the same level of structured research which a fund can do. And sometimes they cannot even invest in them, because either you are looking at ICOs, which were kind of, I would say, abused, where there was a lot of misinformation and people were just chasing these ICOs for big returns. But when you look at how VCs work, we look at the equity, we don't look for tokens, we look for like standard equity investments. Even today, like let's take an example of Block.One. I'm sure Block.One investment would have done much better for the investors than the EOS token for the VCs who invested in Block.One at early stage when EOS was launched. So I think these are some ideas. Like I'm sure the scale of the returns were 100x or more for Block.One investors. Now, how do you go and do that? Is only through like private equity, where a normal average investor does not even have access to those investments. And that's what we are trying to bring in with Blockstart Venture Fund. And also there's a huge opportunity because the VCs are too busy looking at multi-million-dollar investments because of the big purse they are carrying, where we are able to focus on early stage ideas, which were the same level when we were in 2010, for example, for internet companies, for iPhone apps, for even cloud-based companies. All these were pretty small ideas. They were looking for like 100 to 200K or 100K investments, not like millions of dollars investments. And blockchain is at that space, and we believe that it's a huge opportunity, and we wanted to bring that to the normal investors, to the angel investors, so that we can help them guide through this process.
A few things on what you said. So the Block.One equity, 100%, you're correct on that. We saw they did the equity buyback at the beginning of 2019, and everyone was all up in arms about it, but those were great returns. People that, I forget what the percentage gains were, but even if you bought a year prior to that buyback date, you did really, really well. And those are the opportunities that aren't really accessible to most people. How would someone get involved with this venture fund? And you mentioned 506C, and I think that might be a good spot. Why don't you explain what a 506C is and why that's actually really, really important?
Okay, so I think SEC, of course, it's an equity fund. So it is like an equity. It's not like tokens. We cannot say, it's anybody can invest. So SEC imposes very strict regulations to whom you can offer this security. And for good reasons, because you do not want to create frauds in the market. So this is called Regulation D, under which SEC has recently, I think under the Obama's administration, there was a Jobs Act, where there was some kind of exemptions which were issued, like which is 506C, 506B, and 506D, and so on. So basically, these are a different class of investments. So 506B is what we usually, you cannot really go and talk on, for example, on YouTube or publicly about your fund, and you can solicit investments. 506C allows you to do that. but there is additional restriction in 506C that only accredited investors can invest in it. And usually, unfortunately, in US, that accredited investor status is based on certain income parameters. So you can call it as only applicable to high net worth individuals, either who have a high kind of net worth over $1 million, or they earn more than $200,000 in yearly income. The good news is, though, that this year, I think there was a new proposal being floated by SEC where they are allowing some kind of a skill-based accredited investor status. And we are looking out for that. I think if that happens, definitely that will open up the doors for even more sophisticated investors. And I'm sure that many in crypto world, they may not have that much money, but they may be more sophisticated than the high net worth individuals who get.
That's huge. Just because someone has a lot of money, like they probably made some good decisions along the way, but that is not a guarantee. So the update with the SEC, or the proposal from the SEC that you mentioned, I don't think it has a name, but it came out late December. And what are the current restrictions for accreditation? You have to have $1 million in assets, not including your house, or have $250,000 or more of income, I think, on your last 2 tax returns. It's something like that.
It's more than 200,000 individually, or 300,000 with your spouse.
Okay. So with the highlights, I'll go through some of the bullet points, but the most important highlight of this SEC update, and as far as I know, it hasn't been approved. This is a proposal, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. So they said they want to add new categories to the definition that would permit natural persons to qualify as accredited investors based on certain professional certifications and designations, such as Series 7, Series 65, or 82 license, or other credentials issued by an accredited educational institution. So the Series 7, the Series 65, and the Series 82, those are certifications that already exist. If you want to be a financial advisor, you have to get all of these certifications to give investment advice, which I don't have those certifications. This show is never investment advice. I just want to throw that out there. Nothing's ever investment advice. We're just talking about investing. But they left the door open with that interpretation of it, of new designations or new certifications. What they're basically saying is, if you could prove that you are educated, you know that you could lose all of your money, and you could manage your money properly, then who has the right to hold you back from making these early stage investments? Like, why should these $50,000 angel investments only be available to millionaires? It doesn't make sense. It's locking a lot of people out. So by getting this 506C, I feel like you're probably ahead of the curve here, because if this proposal goes through, and if over the upcoming years, or however long this takes, they come up with an education institution or a certification that regular people can get, maybe even take online, the floodgates open to regular retail investors to have the same opportunity, as long as they could prove that they understand what they're getting into. And that's the SEC is trying to protect people. We could argue against how their rules are outdated, but at the end of the day, all they want to do is protect people so that they don't lose their shirts. And I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. The other thing that's relevant here, I know you saw, because we talked about it earlier, but the Hester Peirce 3-year safe harbor for crypto token sales. So this is separate from the Blockstart Venture Fund, but it's relevant for investing and in the crypto space. What were your thoughts on that? She's kind of hinted at it for the past couple of months now, but to finally see it come out publicly, what were your thoughts?
I think the SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce, I think she's been the really godsend for crypto community, because she has been talking about it. She talks in so many conferences about how the regulations have to change. And now with this new proposal, I think it's very exciting. I mean, for me personally, because we talk to so many ideas. So in Blockstart, we have so many different startups, and many of them are trying to issue a token. We go through so many iterations of how do we escape from being termed as security, and sometimes almost scrapping the idea, even though it's a very, very innovative idea, just because we think it's a risk. I think if this proposal gets approved, it will open the doors for innovation, especially in the blockchain space, because as we all know, I think blockchain cannot operate without some kind of token. Even if you're not selling that, means I'm not a big fan of selling, ICO tokens and so on. I am a big fan of utility tokens, which can reward people. Like, for example, voice, like they are not trying to sell their voice token out in the market. They're simply trying to give you tokens and create an economy on that. I think those ideas, I would say, are huge. And unfortunately, with the current regulatory environment, all of them are scared to even launch a utility token. So for me, I think it's a huge, huge step if SEC really goes ahead and approves it. As you said, these are all proposals, and we are still waiting for real action to happen.
Mm-hmm. So if all of this stuff gets pushed through, hypothetically, do you think that that'll open up the doors to dividend tokens? Because those were my favorite tokens during the first year of the EOS public network launch, was the rise of like the EOS BET or EarnBet now and DICE and games like, I guess they're casino coins at this point, but that's just because those are the projects willing to take the risk in this regulatory gray area. But there's so many other use cases where you could potentially have a utility token that could earn yield. Do you think that with this updated regulation that is something that would be on the table still, or would that be like kind of like the next iteration of regulation?
So to be frank, I would steer clear of giving my opinion on that, because I'm not an expert on those, because we are focusing on enterprise. I do see that EOS had a huge casino market, and those tokens giving dividends. Remember one thing, that even if SEC comes out with any of these proposals, if you are issuing dividend, you are almost creating an investment token, and it will fall into some sort of regulation, because there's a big chance, like even if you go back, there are a couple of good projects like this EarnBet and DICE and so on, but there were 10s and 20s of other casinos which were basically a Ponzi scheme, where people just early miners, they just dump the tokens on the late entrant. So there's always, if you make it easy enough for scamsters to come and issue these tokens and yield tokens, ultimately people will get hurt. So I'm actually with SEC on this, on saying, yeah, we should not make this like just open doors for anybody. What they are trying to define right now in this 3-year model is go and build a model which can later on be decentralized and prove it, that it is either a utility token or it is completely decentralized. Like Ethereum is already kind of clear from SEC side after all this investigation they did earlier, and they published reports. I think they believe Ethereum is decentralized. So now this is a great model where you can build a project for which lasts. I still, to be personally, I think I'm not in favor of allowing anybody to issue tokens and raise money, because 3 years is a long time to scam people. So we still don't want those kind of things to happen.
Yeah, and let me just backtrack on I think we need to grow up out of the casino phase of crypto. I think it's much bigger than that. And that's why I'm excited to have this conversation, because you are working with real life businesses. This isn't like crypto projects you're working with. You're working with like real businesses, real business models where blockchain could really, really, really benefit them. But the one area where a dividend token might make sense is something like an STO. You're pretty active in your research and talking to people in the STO space. What's been going on there over the last year? Because I haven't really been in tune with STOs.
I think STOs are moving ahead very, very well. I think there are a lot of platforms coming up. Even in EOS space, I think we hear what Chinta is doing, and with Verbly and so on. But I think irrespective of, I think a smaller domain, I think STOs are big, right? Means we had this Overstock company coming out with that platform. T0, I believe. Zero. Then we had the Securitize. We have so many other, if you go Google it right now, you will see 10 plus STO platforms. So STOs are moving ahead. I think it's the future, because you don't want to be dealing with paper and paperwork and all those kind of things. But remember, when you're doing STOs, you're still going through the full SEC process. You're either exempted company under a Reg A or Reg D, some format of security identification. Otherwise, you cannot issue STOs. So people confuse that, STO will open up the doors. Means STOs will never be traded on Nudex. You will not have a decentralized market for STOs. Now, so STOs are going to be very much regulated, and they will be only traded on regulated exchanges. So while STO is big for people who are trying to issue equity, and that's where I think when you say dividend tokens, it makes a lot of sense. If you are going to issue dividend tokens, people who can participate in these STOs will be able to benefit from seeing the decentralized economies. But remember, it's still, as I said, it still has to be either a Reg D, Reg A, And unless the accredited investor rules and all the other rules are not compliant, you still cannot buy STO. Like an average person will not be able to buy STO in US unless it's the same thing which applies for our fund. And we are, by the way, as you said, like we are actively looking into it. So even we are looking at tokenizing our fund. Even though it's an equity fund and a standard venture fund, we do want to give the benefits of blockchain to our investors. And it is definitely the transparency which blockchain brings in, the kind of decentralized transfers from one user to another. Those are great features of token economy. And I think that's something which we are all excited about. And I do see STO being relevant, but I don't think they are replacing or normalizing the utility tokens of the crypto of the world. So what Commissioner Peirce is saying is that you can probably build utility tokens or decentralized networks which do not need to be STOs, which can be the way Ethereum is or Bitcoin is, which are not recognized as securities. And I think that's much bigger. What the recent announcement of proposal of this 3-year plan, which people can raise money, which is very surprising for me. It means I would be very careful on allowing raising money, but just to issue a token and decentralizing it over a period of 3 years is a great proposal. It can open up the doors for innovation, and those need not be STO. I think STOs will be very slow because of the regulations around them.
For STOs to move forward, I think the first proposal we talked about, the one that came out in December that adds new categories to what an accredited investor is, it would still require that certification. So it's still a much smaller market than everybody, which is what the Hester Peirce proposal would allow. And just so people know what we're talking about here, I'll just read a few snippets from the article. They want to create a strict set of requirements for crypto projects to raise funds through a token sale or no token sale, including requiring personal disclosures, code disclosures, public notices, and a number of other factors, including due diligence on the team. And I wish they had that stuff as a requirement back in 2017, because that was always the hardest part of doing your research is you're relying on a LinkedIn profile and this guy's picture that someone could have just stole. Like you can't do due diligence properly on the internet, like with a website. You need background information. You need that due diligence. And I think if you go through the due diligence and get this certification or stamp of approval or whatever it is, then you can move forward. The biggest thing that stood out to me was at the end of this article, and she said, I'll just read the entire quote. So at the end of the 3-year grace period, let me backtrack. You get 3 years from the time you distribute your token to decentralize it and prove that you are a utility token. If you're not a utility token, they basically they want to create a way that lets you pivot and basically become a security token. But otherwise, they say you've passed all our tests and you're now a utility token. You do not have to worry about the SEC ever breathing down your neck ever again. But it says here, at the end of the grace period, the initial development team will have to determine whether the token transactions constitute security transactions. And then the team should look to create liquidity for the token by securing secondary trading markets, which remain compliant with money transmission and all that stuff. So basically like your Coinbases, your Krakens, your regulated exchanges. They're basically saying here, yeah, once you go through this 3-year period, go talk to exchanges, which is what teams should be doing anyway, but they're not allowed to because of the rules. Like, how crazy is it that you have these projects? I mean, I'll use Block.One for an example. They weren't able to get EOS listed on exchanges. That probably a lot to do with their ICO being ongoing, during that process. But this is just the natural progression of any project. You have to get listed. But right now it's can't talk price, can't talk exchanges, can't talk this or that. And this was a breath of fresh air that they're thinking about this and realizing it doesn't make sense. So
yeah, I think it's a very ambitious proposal. I'm not very hopeful that it will get passed because of the strict regulatory environment. But even if 50% of it get passed in some form, I think it would be a lot of progress here.
I mean, it's just it might take longer. I mean, all of the old guard will be retiring, getting out of office, and then the new guard will come in. I remember I was at a conference 2 years ago, and this guy, he was some regulator on the CFTC or something. He was saying, yeah, all of the interns and junior employees in our offices, I forget what government, I think it might have been the SEC, is they all have side jobs. They have these part-time jobs. And I said, what's that? He said, altcoins. It was like during the better times, and this guy from the SEC was just saying that like the younger generations working at these offices of all these regulatory units, they all know what's up. Like that's the future. Like hopefully it doesn't take until everyone retires, but it's getting better. I think we talked about the climate, regulatory. I want to get into the projects. So today you announced on Twitter, on your social media, on everywhere, a laundry list of new deployments. So you're coming hard and fast here. Let's talk about DAPP Accounts first. What is DAPP Accounts?
All right. So I think you are going to hear it first. I hope we are able to get this going by the time this show streams. But basically what we are working on, we have seen like crypto or even blockchain adoption being the biggest challenge is onboarding users. EOS was, I think, one of the biggest advantage where we said, oh, you can come and you can create usernames which are easy to pronounce. And you can, but then people started talking about resource management, even just holding keys. I think the biggest friction is how do you store your keys safely? There are passphrases, there are a lot of other ways, the hardwares which we use, like Ledger and so on. So what we did is for dApps, I think they will never get mass adoption with this kind of a model where we cannot have people carrying keys or remembering passphrases. So what we have done with DAPP Account, using LiquidApp's LiquidAccount technology, which is LiquidAccounts is amazing because it allows you to create as many accounts as you want for free. And then as a DSP, we learned through this process, we've done some custom changes to this model. And what we are doing with DAPP Account, as we call it, you can log in with any machine into your account. You can interact with dApps. You don't have to worry about keys, wallets. It will be stored in your device, and you can recover those even if you lose them by simple two-factor authentication with your phone, with your email, and just like what we do with our bank accounts. When you go and you log in, and that says that, okay, can you trust this computer? And you just store your you don't have to do two-factor authentication every time you go. So similarly, you will already be logged in on your device if you trust this computer, and you will be able to go and either own the tokens, even participate in governance. For example, if you remember, we did this hackathon, and our project was to bring centralized exchange tokens to go vote and even stake into Rex and so on. Now, this will be possible. I think it's impossible for us to go change what centralized exchanges are doing. But if people open up DAPP accounts, they can bring the tokens here. Because they will have the convenience of centralized exchanges that is holding the tokens without wallets, but they should be able to interact with even the DeFi system, even with staking for proxies, earning rewards. So all these things we are visualizing as happening through DAPP account, and we are inviting dApps. Like if you, like for example, what Moonlighting did for their user base, they did not want users to have wallets. They did use the custodial service, which is a third-party custodial, which is ORID, which is a great service. We have been using them, and it's like really amazing, right? That you do not have to worry about it. You can log in with your Google and Facebook accounts. What we are saying is some people do not like custodial services. So this offer is where you are the custodian, where you are holding the keys in your computer, and using LiquidAccount and using the DSPs, you are able to access your accounts. And that's how we are trying to visualize the dApps, where dApps can integrate with the other users on the platform who are average users, who are not crypto-friendly people, who are people who can interact with dApps just by their emails or their phone numbers.
The use cases are insane. So I'm just looking at the features on the website. So you could owner transfer tokens. So you could transfer tokens, interact with dApps, with your scatter wallet, multi-device access, participate in governance. And all of this is done for free for the user. So the user just literally goes to the website, they plug in their phone number, and then they create their account. And then that account is associated with whatever hardware device that they created their account with. So if I did it, if I set up my first account on my iPhone is basically my private key. Is that a good analogy there? Is like your hardware?
So basically we store the key on the on encrypted. Just like you can visualize it like Scatter. When you go and set up your Scatter, Scatter stores the keys on your device, on your computer. And you do not have to go enter your private keys every time when you're using Scatter. So if your Scatter is on, all the dApps just pop up and they sign the transaction. That's what you do today. So this is exactly what we are doing. The only change is that in this case, because we are using liquid accounts, we are able to recover those accounts on any device. And plus, you can use the same account from multiple devices. So that's right. We store the key encrypted on the device. That's the model we are using.
So that eliminates. So how many? It's removing a lot of headaches. So one, no external downloads. So let's use the centralized exchange example here. So if I have my EOS tokens on Coinbase, Coinbase doesn't have any earning programs. I can't vote. But if I want to move my tokens off of Coinbase, if you've ever tried to educate someone on how to do this, it's a lot more complicated than all of us already in EOS think. You gotta get a scatter wallet. You gotta somehow transfer funds to buy the RAM required for your EOS account to even create it in the first place. Then you got to import that into Scatter if you didn't buy it from Scatter. It's just like a lot of steps. So with DAPP Account, basically, I have my tokens on EOS. I go to DAPP Account. I just create an account with my phone. Never have to download anything. It's just no keys to manage. And then from Coinbase, I go there and I withdraw my funds from Coinbase. I send it to, how would I do it? With an EOS account name, then something in the memo, probably to identify.
So DAPP account. So we will have a DAPP account contract account name, and then there will be a memo which will be on your DAPP account as you log in. We will, just like exchanges do, they give you a memo which goes and which takes the tokens from exchange, and we will allocate it in the VRAM. So what if people who are more familiar with liquid accounts technology, so basically liquid accounts allow you to store the keys and your individual table. So basically VRAM holds your token balance on the chain. So it's like if we can create a browser, so that's our future features where we will be able to allow you to see all your actual on-chain activity and so on. But basic idea is that your tokens go into your entry on the VRAM in the liquid account. As we see, so the memo is basically the V account name, we call it the liquid account name. But again, this is all hidden. We don't even want people to know their account names. Means this is just like a code. Like when you send the tokens to an exchange, you get some kind of a reference code for yourself, right? Means which identifies your account on the exchange. Similarly, there will be something which will be available in your DAPP account. And DAPP account is simply just going to the website. So dappaccount.com, you go there and you are able to do whatever you want without even worrying about what your liquid account name is. You will be able to see your tokens. So basically in DAPP accounts, you will be able to see all your tokens. And as we integrate more and more tokens, you will be able to see all your tokens. It will be an individual table on-chain in VRAM, which somebody can go and verify that whatever we are showing in the dashboard is the same thing which you are seeing on-chain on VRAM, and which can be verified on EOS mainnet through, as you said, with any DSP can verify that. But of course, this will take time to go and develop all the verification tools, but we will be working on this with other DSPs as we go along. But I think the basic idea is all of these things we are asking because we are crypto people. We care about what is on chain and so on. If you go to like an average user who is trying to interact with dApps, they don't care. They don't even care about verifying on chain. What they care about is, can they get the benefits of blockchain? And if the dApp itself is bringing the benefit of blockchain to users without them knowing what is blockchain, I think that's a future we envision. That's where we say that, okay, the enterprise customers with whom we talk to, they are not looking to say, oh, how do I give token to somebody? What they're looking to do is, how do I add value to my use case without telling people that I'm using blockchain? And that is where I think the biggest benefit we can bring, where people do not have to, like when we say airdrops, yes, it's a great feature of blockchain, but it's again, people need to understand what is the token. The airdropping can be as simple as giving some kind of a marketing money to people, right? It need not be a token which people have to interact with. And DAPP account can allow you to do those kind of token transfers, verification of the people, like where these are real people whom we gave the tokens and they are coming and spending it. You can actually, that's a benefit of blockchain, not having people holding wallets. So wallets is a kind of a necessary evil of blockchain where you need to have those. So our DAPP account idea came into existence because our goal is to work with dApps who are going to be able to use average user who doesn't care about wallets.
That brings us to our next topic. Average users, onboarding users, real world use cases, enterprise, organic community market. So this is, I guess, your second enterprise project coming out of the Blockstart Accelerator, Moonlighting obviously being the first with their 750,000 users, which I've probably repeated about 100 times this year. But yeah, what's the organic community market? Where did the idea come from, and what makes it enterprise?
All right. So yes, I think we have, as I've been telling, even during many of these previous interviews and talks about moonlighting, like we do have many projects in our accelerator, and we're working with enterprise. Our organic community market has been going on for some time. Unfortunately, it took us a little longer than what, because it's a ground up project. It's being built just for blockchain, right from from the real basics. What it is, it's basically providing you direct producer to consumer food delivery, which is like the ingredients, organic ingredients, which I think all of us nowadays are moving towards organic. There's a lot of health consciousness all around us. What we are seeing is the organic market is kind of distributed across either when you're buying online, you're either buying through Amazon, you're buying through some other markets, and the prices from producer to consumer becomes 3 or 4 times of what they should be if you're buying directly from producers. And it's very difficult for you to buy certified, verified organic produce when you're going and buying in your local markets, which is great. I mean, we do encourage everybody to buy in their local markets, but people still look for those FDA seals and so on, and all these ingredients. So I think what we have been working with certain producers who are like one of the promoters who came to us, and they were looking for ideas on blockchain. And we have developed a membership model where you can buy an online membership. You can go and buy these products directly from producer at a very big discount from what you will otherwise get from Amazon. And you are cutting down all the middlemen. Of course, you're not going to get like free shipping, but what we have realized is that shipping cost is very, very small portion. When you pay at Amazon, you actually end up paying for 4 times the shipping cost just by paying more for the same produce. So those kind of things we will bring the benefit. And by using blockchain, we are also making it more like a the actual user-driven market where users can give feedback through their membership. We can track that on blockchain. We can allow them to have bigger voice if they are the bigger user of the platform, and we can actually know real users and separate out, loud voices from actual users who make opinions about the market and how to improve. So that's a very, very big deal for producers who want to sell and connect with the consumers directly, not through the middlemen of the big corporates today.
Sounds like a great use case, but I said this last week. I said, forgetting where I said it. I said it to someone. I said, I show people and not projects. Who are the people behind this project that make this project legitimate and have, in my opinion, I think it has a very good chance of success?
Sure. So I think Eric Botner, he's the main promoter. He comes from the Earth Circle fames. I don't know, many people I talked to, as I was working with him, I learned when I talked about Earth Circle Organics, I realized a lot of people were already buying Earth Circle Organics. So he was one of the partners there. He came out of that. He exited that deal because he wanted to build something on blockchain. And he's the main promoter. He's the CEO. And I'm the advisor from Blockstart side. We are working with him. We have Bal Singh, who is currently operating the technical side of it. I'm sure people can join the social media and so on. We'll start announcing more and more details. As we call it, when a company comes out of Blockstart, we call them graduation. When they go out in public and we launch the project. So they are just going through the graduation process this week, and they are launching. So I'm sure people will be able to interact with all the people. We need to also understand that this team itself is not like in a typical crypto crowd. These are people from enterprise world. They are not like always available and used to the Telegram models and not easy to touch base with. So we will help them. We are building a community for them. We are hiring people who can really manage the community. But I'm sure there will be opportunities we can bring them for an interview probably. I'm sure you would be excited about that part. But yeah, we need to also appreciate the part that this is like the average world, which is not into YouTubes and Telegrams of the world. So these are
Telegram's just such a tiny little speck of the world. Like this is the pie we want to get a piece of, and that's what you're doing. You're leading the way on. What challenges have you faced with onboarding enterprise in the blockchain? Like whenever you're first approaching a company, like if they're still on the fence of do I or do I not need blockchain, is it going to create more problems than it's worth? Like how do you approach those issues, and how do you meet those challenges? Or
I think the biggest challenge is, of course, which we touched upon in the early part of the show, that's the regulations. Because as you bring in blockchain, sometimes like for a big part of the crowd, even EOS or blockchain is a dirty word in like where we are saying, okay, there's something illegal going on with because of the bad name ICOs created for blockchain in 2017 and all the SEC crackdowns. So that is the biggest challenge, first of all. So we need to work with them on why blockchain. I think the biggest thing is, how do you show them the benefits? Many of these enterprise customers are already know about like what is blockchain. They already are investigating. They just don't understand how they can navigate this process and bring the value to the people. So this is exactly, I think, one more thing which I wanted to highlight. In like when we were working for Blockstart Ventures as a fund, we go into a lot of research on the market size, on what's really happening. So right now, let me tell you, more than 50% of US corporates are investing dollars in blockchain. It doesn't sound like it is true, but when we really go into the research, and if you even like research from IDC and one of the biggest research houses in US, what they're telling us is in last 2 or 3 years, almost 50% of the big corporates have spent at up to $5 million on blockchain, whether it is in a study or on prototyping, on actually deploying in various stages. Different companies are deploying blockchain. So it's not very difficult to get into conversation. What is difficult is to bring them to public blockchains, to show them we can really get the benefits of blockchain beyond cost saving. Because the first biggest use case of blockchain is cost saving, which IBMs of the world are doing with Hyperledger and other things, which is a huge benefit, but it is all private blockchains. I think what we are trying to do is bringing new use cases using public blockchain. I think that's a totally different discussion. And that's where I think the enterprise customers really get surprised with the kind of models we can build, where we can say that this is something which is going to be groundbreaking. And but beyond that, it's pretty easy. I think they don't care. I mean, there's no maximalism in enterprise world. Nobody knows like Ethereum is better or EOS is better. All they care for is, can you make this use case happen? And how do you justify deploying blockchain for benefit of my end user? That's what they care for.
Where does DAPP Network fit into all of that?
I think from a DAPP Network perspective, yes. So people who first jump onto EOS, I think EOS, we have been working on EOS mostly because that's how we see you can scale. The DAPP Network is very, very useful when we hit those scaling issues. So as soon as, I think one example is DAPP Account itself, which we just announced. The DAPP Account is only possible because of Liquid Apps and because of the DAPP Network. Otherwise, you still cannot get away from the whole idea of, we cannot assign multiple keys to a single account or all those things which are happening at base layer. Now, you do not have to change base layer. Now you can do the same thing with in another layer, which is the Liquid Accounts and which is the VRAM, where you can scale to any level in terms of how much data you need. You don't have to worry about the RAM cost. You don't have to worry about issuing individual accounts to each user. So it's without doubt, I think, as I keep telling in Telegram and many other places where people ask me this question, Liquid Apps and the DAPP Network is a set of tools. It's not, I don't like the word layer 2, to be frank, because I don't know how best to put it, but a lot of people have started calling it layer 2. Mm-hmm. I call it a set of tools which can allow you to build any model you want, which is not tied to the base layer. So you can basically free up from the base layer constraints using Liquid Apps and the DAPP Network tools. And that's how I see it, rather than seeing it as necessarily a layer 2. Because layer 2, the problem is people start seeing very fixed, rigid ideas. Because if you define a layer 2, people say, is it multi-chain? Is it do I have to use liquid chain? No, you don't have to use liquid chain always. You can build a mixed model. And if you know the technology, I think very few people understand the technology. People just see a picture or one interpretation of a technology, and that becomes too rigid in their mind. So that's why I would say Liquid Apps is an amazing thing. I think without them, we would not have reached here in terms of getting the scalability for enterprise. Building a MVP is great on EOS today, but scaling on EOS is being made possible by DAPP Network. I would say that is amazing set of tools, and we are fans of that. I can tell you that I have told this many times that we are spending 50% of our time in Blockstart on Liquid Apps technology, and then we do other work on on building the idea.
Wow, yeah, you're right though about the terminology. We ourselves at Liquid Apps have called it second layer. We use the term middleware a lot now. And it's hard because you have to kind of describe things within the scope that people are going to understand. And this is something that like really there's no context for it. It didn't exist before. So it's really hard to express these ideas. So you try to use terms people do understand, like second layer. And we saw like last week in DC when Dan was asked about second layer, and he was describing a version of a second layer solution that we've seen and heard of before. But what he was describing was parallel chains, which like if you've heard us talk about like liquid chains and we're working with parallel blockchains to increase throughput. We're on the same page here. So it's just a matter of how you interpret layer 2. And I think you're right. Like that term probably does need to go by the wayside. And right now we're using middleware as the term. And I think that's a better term for it. But really it's extending your toolkit. It's giving extra tools. So if you're like a carpenter, it's like we're giving you a whole new tool set. We give you a brand new belt. Like we're basically giving you like the Batman utility belt that lets you do it whatever the hell you want and climb up skyscrapers and stuff. And that brings us to the third project you're launching, and it is in partnership with another DAPP service provider, DAPP Solutions, which is founded by Jason Kemp, who I know really well. He's a great guy. He's an audiologist. He's a doctor up in Canada. Deep experience in business and corporations. He's passionate about blockchain, just like you and I, just like all of our audience. And you guys are finally ready to make public something that you've been working on for at least the last half a year or so.
Yep. And I think Jason and me, we met in DC first time. And since then, we are just rolling. Like, I think he has a great vision. And this project we are going to talk about, this is called Blokument. As you know, I think the biggest issue today in real world, even forget about smart contracts. First of all, our Blokument goal, let me explain what is Blokument. Blokument is enforcing smart contracts in real world. Like you create real documents which can be produced in arbitrations, in courts, and so on. And from that perspective, what we are calling it is like, documents on blockchain. So we call it enforceable smart contracts. But it can work the other way. So I'm getting even more excited about it because as we dig deeper into it, we realize that it's not just smart contract going to real world, but the real world coming to smart contract. And which is where the even bigger use case which exists, which is about the traceability of actual actions. Some of these ideas which are today, when you use digital signatures, they are not foolproof. They are not acceptable everywhere. With blockchain, you can actually make that gap to be closed, and you can really make progress on proving the auditability and traceability of those digital interactions. And I think that's what we are aiming for with Blokument. It's a big enterprise project. Again, we are not expecting this to be, a standard crypto project. It will be more of a SaaS service with a lot of implications on how blockchain world operates. So I think we are very excited about it. And I think Jason is a great person to work with in terms of the kind of excitement he has about building these ideas. Mm-hmm. And we are very excited to be partnering with the DAPP Solutions on this. And within, I think you will see those very soon. We are announcing it. It will be launching in next couple of months. But I think we are announcing it this weekend. And I think this is the show where everything comes out. So I thought this is
it's everything Blockstart and Raman today, man. You don't do anything small, do you? It's go bigger, go home with everything you're doing here, everything we've talked about. I'm trying to. Where can we go from here? So, okay. You go bigger, you go home. So basically, Blokument, you're trying to create DocuSign-like functionality. So DocuSign, I think, is a term most people can understand. Is that essentially what this is DocuSign on EOS blockchain?
Okay, so I would be a little careful here, not inviting competition right away when we're launching. But I think DocuSign is a very, very kind of specific use case. I think I would say it is even bigger than that in terms of perspective. What we are trying to highlight is think about solving any blockchain contract arbitration. Means EOS. I think everybody knows ECAF. I think who is involved. It was it is not enforceable. It did not work. But having said that, it was not a bad idea. You still need some sort of arbitration in the real world. Mm-hmm. When you have real people involved and people losing money, then there are multiple parties involved. I think, and these are the things which we can implement. I think this is one of the first goal which we are bringing with Blokument, where we can enforce these things and provide opt-in, higher layer kind of arbitration model where because base layers arbitration doesn't work. That's what we saw with ECAF. What works is a DAPP specific opt-in arbitration. For example, like DAPP accounts, we can have arbitration because like DAPP account is holding your tokens, and we would love to provide the arbitration opportunity if there are conflicts. And it is technology. Mistakes happen. There are bugs. There can be something which can lead to issues. And the thing is, all of these apps, like when you go to casinos, you spin the dice and that money never came back, and they said, oh, you know what, this transaction was lost in a micro fork on EOS because of the block producers dropped the blocks. So think about
terrible.
this. These are the kind of things where like you threw in like you are a big bettor, you were betting like 1,000 EOS, and suddenly you said, oh, nobody saw those EOS, they just disappeared. Anyway, I'm just saying that a lot of things can happen. I may be technically incorrect the way I described this particular issue, but what I'm trying to highlight is things happen. And we believe that smart contracts need arbitration. We are building that. The second part is bringing, as you said, DocuSign. It's a good question. I would say DocuSign. What is DocuSign? When you get an email link that go sign here, you can forward that link to anybody, and anybody can sign it. Mm-hmm. It's not traceable. It's not auditable. It's all about a link based on email. And on blockchain, if we can definitely provide the same functionality, but we can go one step further, where we can say that you own these keys and nobody else can just sign it, even if they get the link. If you're not logged in with your real wallet, you cannot really sign that DocuSign. So these are the kind of things which we can fix, which are the holes in digital signature world.
I'm just imagining like what this would look like. So like whenever I log into my bank and I'm on a new device, it says, hey, you're logged into a new device, check your email and click this link. And that's how you verify it. So in this case, it would say, okay, we don't recognize this device because your key's not embedded in there locally with the DAPP account. So it would say, verify this device with a device that is authorized. So you'd have to use your phone, which has your private key embedded in it, to basically add the second device. So it's like, it's removing a huge security vulnerability with that link in your email. Anyone can click that link. So that's huge. But writing of the smart contracts itself. So how do you simplify like the rules of a contract? So something simple like you give me this digital item and then in return I give you this digital token in exchange. How does a regular user create that smart contract? Is DocuSign going to make it really easy or not DocuSign? Is Blokument going to make that really easy?
No, I think we are not trying to create new use cases for blockchain. What we are saying is if you have a smart contract, if you are already operating, we can bring kind of arbitration and enforcement of that smart contract in real world by bringing that. Then in terms of the actual document creation, we are actually also working on ideas where these documents will be actually stored as an NFTs or like, or entities, whatever you can call it. So basic idea is that these will be all artifacts stored as real documents, which will be used for arbitration. You can even go produce them in court later on with audit tracing and so on. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of great ideas which are flowing. Again, means we have a big legal team being planned for it to make it, enforceable in court. So it's still going to take some time, but these are ideas, and I don't want to give all of our secret sauce right now.
This is huge. This is like mind blowing because opt-in arbitration is the key. When you're forced to agree to an arbitrator that you didn't agree to, like we saw with ECAF, that's where you run into issues. But if it's opt-in, like I could see like wallet providers offering like arbitration, like you don't have to use, like you could just work on the base layer if you want to, but and I think that's kind of like what Voice is trying to do too. I know that they're going to have like key recovery features. Like they have to have some sort of, I don't know if it'll be programmatic arbitration or what, but there has to be a way to enforce like human elements and intent and stuff. So someone has to arbitrate disagreements. Like you can't just rely on code as law for everything. Code as law could be everything, which is like what you're forced to do, but you should be able to opt in to whatever the hell you want. So who would be the arbitrators? Because this is like new ground here. So are you thinking like traditional arbitration businesses would eventually offer like arbitration services for these blockchain?
Yes. So this will be certified arbitrators with experience. We are going to lead a team. So I think, again, I'm not the right person to comment on it because this is the part where Jason is doing a lot of work. So this is where I think we are trying to build a professional arbitration model, which is very well recognized internationally. This is not going to be a local jurisdiction because, as you know, that under the New York Convention, the arbitration was identified as a legal resolution across the world. It will be and that's where I think decentralized economies need. When we talk about decentralization, when we talk about blockchain-based projects, they are worldwide. They are not like local. Mm-hmm. So today, when you go and you have any issue with your centralized exchange, the only way you can do is you can just keep calling their customer care and try to solve this issue. What we are trying to do when we are bringing like DAPP account, we are bringing like this organic community market, when we are bringing any blockchain based project where we talk about decentralizing, people owning their own stuff and relying on code, there's no way, there's no customer care you can go to because now you are in conflict with the contract or with the contract provider. So the only way you can solve it is with the third party arbitration. And I think that's where all these things, if you see what we announced today, these are individual projects which came out totally independently from, there was no relation. But when we talk together, we realize that we can really add value to each other. And again, this is another thing which we do at Blockstart, where we bring collaborations. We bring your pilot customers sometimes, where we say that all our projects can be pilot customers for each other. That's what we do.
That's great. Is DAPP account going to be integrated with all of these products that you've mentioned today, or I guess the two, Organic Community and Blokument?
Sure. So I think this is, again, a DAPP account is a service which Blockstart is announcing, and it is available to anybody, not just for our own projects in Blockstart, but anybody who wants to integrate. So we are inviting everybody. Organic Community Market, I can already announce that they do see that all their users would not have wallets, and they've like, if I'm buying, a maca root or buying almond flour, I don't need to know about blockchain. So of course, you are talking about people who just simply want to go and access their membership. So yes, whatever blockchain component we enable for them, it will be through some sort of DAPP account integration. All those things are being worked out right now. Blokument, same thing. I would say definitely we are interested, but these are individual entities. The decision will be made over time when the launch happens and how the user requirements are. But I would say that anybody I have talked to, any DAPP, nobody has said they don't want DAPP account. So our goal is to simplify usage, and that's what we are trying to do here.
So I want DAPPs to contact you because this is something, since LiquidAccounts was announced at first, the first time, I don't remember when the time frame was, but this has been something that DAPPs have wanted. But what you created was you made it even more simple for them to integrate it. So if I'm a DAPP, how easy would it be to plug in DAPP accounts into my app from what I currently have today?
All right. So I think if you're a DAPP, it will be, if you're all about, a token or integrating with, a wallet, it will be much easier for us, and we can do it with a very simple model. You can contact us. So the link for contacting will be there on the website. And you can go just enter your idea. We are right now already working on some integrations. So we definitely would take it as things go along. But I think it depends a lot on how much interaction you want. If you want every contract action to be signed by DAPP account, then the scope keep expanding. And technically, it is very much feasible. It's more of a matter of defining the effort involved from both sides. And it's still an alpha launch for us as DAPP account. We are planning to do some tools and some easy way to integrate as the time goes along, and we build this a more mature platform. And how we will definitely share more details. But at this moment, if you're really waiting for this kind of a feature, and if you're a DAPP, do contact us, and we can prioritize and work with you as needed. Because our goal is to make this accessible to everybody, almost everybody on the user side, and as many DAPPs as we can.
I'm excited to create my DAPP account. We're recording this on Thursday. This is probably going to come out on Friday. So hopefully I'll get to have my first DAPP account before I publish this. But if not, I'll have one soon enough. So this is all really exciting. As you reminded everyone, it's either alpha or beta product. So I guess set your expectations, but understand like everything we talked about, the roadmap is deep. The features on your roadmap are extensive. And I'm looking forward to seeing how all of these things grow and benefit each other. There's a lot of synergy between everything you've talked about today. There's another big beta coming out next week. We're 1 week away from the voice beta. What are your expectations for that?
Oh, this is big, right? Means everybody's
huge. I want to see what they open source. I don't expect them to open source at all, but I think the biggest thing is just like like seeing the technology. Like we know it's multi-chain in some way. We know they have probably content addressable storage. I want to see how they're handling that. Like I kind of, not even so much myself look at the tech. I want to basically talk to people like you and Tal after you look at the tech and Peter K and hear your opinions on it. But what is you excited for? Like, what are you looking forward to seeing out of the voice launch as a user and as a technologist?
No, I think as a user, I'm very excited about how it evolves, right? Means can we really create what everybody's envisioning, right? Means the real people interacting and creating value. And of course, the gaming system of the voice tokens will be great to watch out for. How people, everybody tries to game the system, right? Means to gain more and more value.
I like your post if you like mine, Raman.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And I would love to see, Ms. Dan always talks about how they are building a model which can be game proof. And I would love to do that. And I would love people to try breaking it. And as it is a beta, I'm sure they will keep fixing those.
Try.
And but I think I'm a little more like muted in my expectation because of two reasons. When the beta is launched, as Brandon said on the Twitter, that it is going to be a slow rollout with individuals, because KYC is not an easy process. It takes time. So as they invite, let's say they invite 100 people and they're going through the KYC process, I'm sure there will be some hiccups initially. And I would love to see how easy it is to go through that process, and if they have done anything special for that. I would love to see how fast they can bring on the people. I would love to see them sharing numbers, like how many people have signed up for beta and how many are they onboarding. I would love to see the transparency they have promised, and see if we can, all these things are my expectations. But again, as I said, I'm not expecting huge things because it's a beta. It is going to take slow rollout because they cannot do KYC of thousands of people in one day. So I'm sure this will be a kind of, we should not be just holding our breath for, a blast on first day. So
I've set my expectations. I've learned my lesson, guys. I'm not hyping this up too much. I want everyone's I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised in some things, though. I think maybe we'll be underwhelmed in one area, but I think we're going to be absolutely overwhelmed in another area. I think there's going to be at least some sort of surprise like that, but I think the expectations are expected to be a beta, expected to have some hiccups and bugs, but that's, we're on the ground floor of something that could potentially be big. And like you said, we'll be able to like monitor the usage statistics in a way, because even though it'll be on a test net, I'm assuming that they'll have some sort of block explorer to look through that test net. And speaking of test nets, did you have a chance to test out the new Block.One test net that they deployed like a week or two ago?
Not really, because unfortunately, or fortunately, community has been doing great work, and we have some amazing Kylene and Jungle testnets. So thankfully, we were not waiting for Block.One to launch this testnet.
I went through the process of onboarding myself just to like see what that process was. You're right. Like anyone developing on EOS.io today probably is using Jungle or Kylene, but I think this is more for like bringing on enterprise, which seems to be their focus lately. And it made it super easy. Like I didn't have to use a faucet. I was able to just create an account, no wallet. They had a nice flow there. And I was just wondering if you saw it, but anyone, I guess, who hasn't tried it yet, just give it a whirl. It takes like 5 minutes. That's all I put into it. But I like seeing some of the stuff they're doing for making development easier. It's the same thing we're doing at Liquid Apps. It's like developers, it's like a Steve Ballmer thing. Developers. You have to make it as easy as possible, give them the best tools. And I think with like the GitPod environments that they created, and we also created our for Zeus SDK at Liquid Apps. We have the GitPod. If you haven't tried that, that's amazing. What other stuff are you looking forward to in 2020? Let's probably wrap this up here soon. Like this is going to be such a big year. Like you could feel it. We barely ever talk about price on this show, but the market feels strong. I almost am getting worried that I'm feeling bullish right now, because that's usually like a counter indicator. But like technology, I guess we can set the market aside. Hopefully that'll go up. We all want it to go up. But as far as like technology and expectations for 2020, like what do you hope to see as far as advancements and all of that?
I think I would love to see more adoption, and I think we are getting there. We are launching these apps. We are seeing voice coming out. So I would say the biggest thing I'm looking for 2020 is not just plans, but actual adoption, actual DApps. And I think we are there. We are just on that door where we are just entering the whole big mix up of hundreds of apps. And I would love to see voice becoming an ecosystem, not just an app in a standalone app. I would love to see how they integrate other dApps? How do they create an ecosystem of verified users? That is what I would look out for. And of course, as we are a big stakeholder in Liquid Apps side, I would love to see more and more people, coming cross-chain. We are very excited about all the other EOS.io chains. We are also excited about bringing end to this maximalism and saying that ultimately nobody cares about which blockchain you're running on. And let me also say, I think we have not talked about the overall roadmap, and I don't want to be too ambitious here, but when we talk about DAPP account, the technology allows us to have these wallets which are across chains. We are not going to be limiting ourselves to EOS only. And we can have probably everything in a single place through DAPP account, or all these different technologies coming together. That's our vision. And we will be doing our bit, but I hope that more and more people are working towards it and bringing real user to attention rather than talking about my technology is better than yours.
It's exciting, man. That is... I'm glad you said that it's going to be multi-chain. So day one, it's just DAPP accounts I'm talking. Day one, it's basically a virtual account on top of EOS. But you're saying it with LiquidX, especially as more chains deploy the contracts and you spin up the DSP on those chains, potentially any EOS.io chain could be linked to your DAPP account. So you'd have a single DAPP account for, let's say, your Wax, your Talos, maybe Warbly, Ultra, and any chain in the future that is willing, able, and no one has to give you permission. Anyone could deploy these contracts. As soon as there's DSPs operating on a chain, you could pretty much integrate DAPP accounts. And I'm sure Raman's going to be on top of that. Are there any chains in particular that you're excited to kind of expand your footprint with Blockstart? Because you're one of the few people in this ecosystem that's an OG building like crazy that has never been a block producer. So now you're able to bring all the other block producers, they're producing on all the chains. Even Cypherglass started producing on Talos and probably Wax here soon. So how this is your moment to start expanding to the other chains. Are there any that stand out to you?
I think for us, I don't see technically it's not very difficult. We have expanded our infrastructure for Blockstart DSP as which can handle maybe 20 chains. It's not a matter of whether we will definitely enable it. It's a matter of demand, whether we really have users coming in, apps coming in. I think we can spin up maybe tomorrow at least a couple of chains which are already running. And now that LiquidX is out, I'm more excited. I think, by the way, while we have been talking about LiquidX and so on, you also need to understand that it came out only 2 days back, the real code and the deploy, which we can deploy. We are in the middle of launching many things, but this is definitely on our roadmap, and we do want to get other chains onboarded. We do see more interest from Wax right now, I think, out of the other chains. They are they already officially announced LiquidX and Liquid Apps excitement, and there were some press releases. So I would say, if I have to guess, Wax will be the first we will start with because of their openness to integrate, as well as I see BPs from Wax contacting me already. So from that perspective, yes. But if I talk about other chains, I would be careful because I haven't seen that kind of enthusiasm yet from them.
I could agree there without saying too much. I think Wax is a good spot to be for DAPP Network. I'm excited to see how they use it, the apps on there use it. With NFT metadata, there's a really obvious use of VRAM and storage. You think of NFTs, they have usually an image. Where is that image going to be hosted? It could potentially be hosted in liquid storage one day. Okay. So I think, I don't even know how long we've been doing this, but we're not going to cut any of it out because this has been a great conversation. I hope everyone else enjoys it. I know the links are going to be in the description, but where can everyone find everything we've talked about today? So
I think the best would be for individual links, which I think I would love you to have them here. But I think organiccommunitymarket.com is the organic community market. Blockstart, all of you know where to catch me on Telegram, or I think, that's the best place. Telegram for Blockstart. You can post a link here. DAPP account is still going to be under Blockstart, so that's where we will be discussing everything. Then Blokument, again, we have not started social. It's still in early days, but you can reach out to me or Jason, and I'm sure we will send the links to you.
I'm pretty sure everyone in this audience knows where to find you. So this is just a rhetorical question here. But we always close out these shows in a very particular way. I think you're familiar with it, but I'm gonna test you here. So let's close out the show.
Go EOS.
No.
No, I messed up. Do it again.
Well, we gotta like sign off first. It's like, all right, until next time. I'm Zach Gall.
Okay, and I'm Raman Bindlish.
And this is everything EOS.
Man, I'll tell you what. Okay, I have a confession to make. If you're going to cut this off anyway, I never reached the end of your everything.
Benny admitted that the other.